Here's Jonathan in Swansea on freedom of speech. Jonathan, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hi, sir.
Freedom of speech is absolutely essential. You cannot restrict it in any way. It's as vital as breathing in and breathing out, as eating and drinking. It's absolutely fundamental. And if you try and put restrictions on freedom of speech, you're entering the realm of thought crime.
No, well, let's talk about the Westboro judgment, Jonathan, first. Because what has been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court is that someone can go to someone else's funeral and disrupt it by insulting the deceased. Now, that's, in plain terms, a provocation. It's action likely to create a breach of the peace. It's virtually certain to create a breach of the peace. So where does one right begin and another right end?
Well, we all have the right to give offence, George, and we all also have the right not to take offence. Let us not lose our dignity, like Jock Stein said.
Yeah, but I mean, God forbid you were at a funeral of somebody dear to you, and a group of religious maniacs turned up. Can you imagine if they were, for example, Muslim fanatics who turned up at a soldier's graveside and started mocking and insulting the deceased? Can you imagine what the tabloids would say and what the airwaves here on TalkSport would say? And indeed, if you don't mind me saying so, having heard many of your calls in the past, I can't think you'd have been silent on that either.
Well, of course I'd be horrified if someone were to do that, but I'm not going to stoop to their level by banning them from expressing themselves. We should treat others as we should expect to be treated ourselves, and that means allowing people who we disagree with the right to express their opinions. Not to do so would make us just as bad as the Nazis.
Well, it's splendidly liberal, I must say. I mean, it's the purest strain of liberalism that you're expressing here. But I'm going like a dog at a bone to further gnaw away on this point. Let's assume that in Luton, at the burial of a soldier, a group of bearded Islamist fanatics had turned up at the graveside during the funeral and chanted and mocked and insulted the deceased, claiming that he was dead because gays were allowed to serve in the military. I just cannot believe that you or many other people would be lining up to support the right of those fanatics to their freedom of speech on that.
And that's what makes us better people, George, than people who want to restrict freedom of speech, because we know how precious and valuable it is, even to those who we disagree with.
Well, there are limits already, Jonathan, to freedom of speech. There's the limit of libel. Neither you nor I could traduce someone here with an untruth which reduced them in the eyes of their peers, brought them into what the law calls public opprobrium. So there are limits already. There are limits also on people saying things that are likely to cause a breach of the peace. We've been talking about that in relation to Celtic and Rangers. So we don't have pure freedom of speech in Britain, but they have a purer form of it in the United States. So you reckon we should go further down the US route on this?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, a bold set of propositions from Jonathan in Swansea. Where do you stand on that? Should the bearded Islamist fanatic in Luton be allowed to disrupt a soldier's funeral by mocking and claiming that the soldier is dead because God is punishing the military for alleged liberalism in relation to gay people? Ooh, can you imagine how popular that would be here on TalkSport or in the tabloids? Jeff in North Lincolnshire, he's always worth hearing. Let's go to him next on the issue of freedom of speech. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking my call.
Welcome, sir.
Your earlier caller sounded like quite a nice guy, but I was sorry to think that maybe he was giving liberalism a bit of a bad name with this whole free speech as an absolute right.
I think he was fetishizing it a bit.
Yeah, I think that this Westboro Baptist Church, I've actually read about them before. The attorney you had on was got it all right, that they're almost entirely a family of about 50, 60 people.
A bit of inbreeding there, is there, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, they live on this sort of weird grandfather figure, is the guy who runs it, this man called Fred Phelps, who's obviously slightly unhinged. It's sort of like a hero-worshipping cult that they sort of have. But one thing that many people don't know about them is that they're very specialized lawyers. All the daughters and the sons in the family, they all know about law and exactly what they can and can't do, and they've won many court cases in the past. You know, they know the exact distance they have to keep at these pickets and everything. They know exactly what to do. You might remember the terrible Virginia Tech massacre in America.
Yes, of course,
the University massacre a few years ago. The Westboro Baptist Church celebrated that massacre with Fred Phelps saying 33 people died, and Fred Phelps actually said, while we wish that 33,000 were killed, we are thankful for 33.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
This isn't any organization that, deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as Christ. I mean, but they're just this...
the Baptists must be rather embarrassed that they're calling themselves a Baptist church.
I know.
Is there no legal action you could take against passing off?
I don't know. They seem to have, like I said, they're a very sinister group. They seem to have the sort of legal avenue covered. They're very stealthy, very good with the law. I think it was actually in 2009, I remember when Jackie Smith banned Michael Savage from coming to the UK for his hateful comments. She also banned the Westboro Baptist Church. They can't come to Britain anymore, thank God.
Well, Jackie Smith did a good thing. There's a turn-up for the books. Thanks, Jeff, in North Lincolnshire. Port Murdoch. Let's talk to Patrick in Airdrie on freedom of speech. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hi, George. Good morning.
Morning. Welcome.
First of all, I'm looking forward to chatting to you at the Tron Theatre in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yes.
Freedom of speech, I always thought it was on the basis of the principle of harm, that you were allowed freedom of speech on the basis that you knowingly didn't do harm to other people.
Well, that's certainly what it means here, Patrick, but in America they have a much purer version.
Well, even going back to Aristotle and Plato and all your political founding fathers in this country, who their constitution was eventually based on, your Burke and your J.S. Mill, they all based it on the principle of harm. And this seems a ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous ruling. And I just wondered about the family there. They actually sounded quite at home. Like a family we've got in Britain, a family who were inbred, all lived together in a big house with the head of the household who made comments about other people who were very judgmental.
Brilliant, Patrick. You got me there. I'm moving swiftly on to, here's an interesting one. George, just as we have the right to march the Queen's Highway, so we must have the right to free speech. From Big Rab from the Westboro Loyal Rangers Supporters Club. Rab. George, child adoption is deemed perfectly okay to pick a foster family by race, religious beliefs, etc., with a child being denied on these grounds. So why is it then not okay to have a view on religious belief where gays are concerned? Okay to practice bigoted views when it suits? Brian, I hope I've put my view clearly enough for you to get what I'm saying. Actually, Brian, you haven't. Here's a text. Limits on freedom of speech would be going down a very dangerous road. Given an inch, I'm sure a mile would be taken. I have no desire to live in a police state. Netherfield says these troublemakers in the USA who willfully seek to cause greatest offence in the name of free speech are not the Lord's people. For what they do, they cannot be led by the Spirit of God. To do such things, they must be displaying the spirit of the Antichrist. The UK has D-notices, says a texter. The US protects free speech even if it's wrongly used. JB in Erin says, Gigi, Louis Theroux had a week with that baptism group, and they're a mad bunch of religious zealots. He and his viewers were stunned at the hate in that group, and they claim to be of the God Squad. Well, of course, there's many crazed lunatic in the God Squad.